Hi, this is Stephen Younger. I'm a member of the UCF Physical Therapy Program, and today I'm going to be demonstrating how to do a physical assessment of the first carpometacarpal joint, also known as the thumb joint. Before we make any measurements, the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that the patient's arm, wrist, and thumb are in the correct position. The forearm needs to be in the neutral position, the fingers need to be in the anatomical position, and the thumb needs to be resting on the first metacarpal and also on the proximal phalanx of the second digit. Now we need to position the goniometer in order to measure for flexion and extension. The axis of the goniometer is going to go through the first CMC joint. The stationary arm is going to go parallel with the radius, and the movable arm is going to go parallel with the first metacarpal. I'm going to be stabilizing at her wrist while also holding this stationary arm. And what I have to do is I have to make note of what the starting measurement is. It looks like the starting measurement is at 50 degrees. So now I move her thumb into flexion. I'm going to get a firm infeel, and we are now at 19. So 50 minus 19 is 31 degrees. Flexion is normally 15 degrees, so she has a little bit of hyperflexion. So we'll get her back to starting position, resting along the second metacarpal and the proximal phalanx. We'll get the starting measurement again. Looks like we are at 48 this time. And this time we're going to go back towards extension. And this measurement is 68. So 68 minus 48 is 20 degrees, and 20 degrees is normal for extension of the first carpometacarpal joint. To measure thumb abduction, you're going to have the hand in the same position with the forearm in the neutral position, fingers in anatomical position straight out, and the thumb contacting the second metacarpal and the second proximal phalanx. The axis in this measurement is going to be at the junction between the first metacarpal and the second metacarpal. So you need to find those bones, palpate them, get to the end of the joint, and then meet in the middle, and that's going to be the junction. So that's where you're going to put your axis. The stationary arm is going to be parallel with the second metacarpal, and the movable arm is going to be parallel with the first metacarpal. So we have to make a measurement of the starting position. Right now we are at 30 degrees, and from there I'm going to passively put her thumb in as much abduction as possible. Get the movable arm parallel with the first metacarpal. And we are at 55 degrees. So 55 minus 30 is 25 degrees of abduction. According to the Clarkson book, normal passive range of motion for thumb abduction is 70 degrees, but I have never personally ever measured anybody that has gotten to that great of a passive range of motion. Moving on from range of motion testing, we're going to now do manual muscle testing. There are many different muscles that cross the first CMC joint, but the ones that I have chosen are the ones that primarily are involved in movement across this joint. So the first muscle that we're going to measure is the abductor pollicis longus. For this position, I'm going to stabilize at the wrist. She's going to have her forearm in a neutral position, and I'm going to put her thumb into abduction and extension. I'm going to apply pressure against the distal first metacarpal, and I'm going to push towards flexion and adduction. Jenny, don't let me move you. Good. The next muscle is the abductor pollicis brevis. This muscle abducts at both the first CMC joint as well as the first MCP joint. I'm going to stabilize once again at the wrist, and I'm going to put the patient's thumb into abduction. I'm going to resist at the distal part of the first MCP towards adduction. Jenny, don't let me move you. Good. The next muscle to manual muscle test is the adductor pollicis. The adductor pollicis adducts at both the first CMC and the first MCP joint. The patient is going to have their arm flat against the table with the palm up. This is going to provide the stabilization, so there's no stabilization required by the examiner. The thumb is going to be into full adduction with the examiner's hand under, fingers under, and I'm going to be providing pressure against the medial portion of the proximal phalanx towards the upward direction. So I'm just going to tell the patient, don't let me move you when I pull up. Good. The next muscle is the extensor pollicis brevis. While its primary action is to extend the MCP joint of the thumb, it also assists in extending and abducting at the carpal metacarpal joint. I'm going to be stabilizing the wrist with the wrist also in the neutral position. I'm going to put the patient's thumb into extension, and I'm going to provide pressure in the direction of flexion at the proximal phalanx of the thumb joint, of the thumb. I'm going to push down towards the ground, towards flexion. Don't let me move you. Good. Lastly, we're going to do a manual muscle test of the flexor pollicis brevis. The patient is going to have their hand palm up, and the examiner is going to be stabilizing at the wrist. The thumb is going to be put into flexion, and pressure is going to be given against the proximal phalanx of the thumb towards extension. So I'm going to tell the patient, don't let me move you. Good. If you follow the techniques demonstrated in this video, you will no doubt have a great understanding of how to physically assess the thumb joint. Thank you. My name is Stephen Younger. I'll see you next time.